Edith Bowling was born on October 15, 1872, at Wytheville, Virginia, to a circuit court judge. Edith was a descendant of the first settlers to arrive at the Virginia colony. Through her father, she was also a descendant of Pocahontas, the daughter of the paramount chief of the Powhatan Confederacy. On April 5, 1614, Pocahontas, who was renamed as Rebecca following her conversion to Christianity, married John Rolfe. Their granddaughter, Jane Rolfe, married Robert Bowling. Edith was the seventh of 11 children, 2 of whom died in infancy. The Bowling household was a large one, and Edith grew up within the confines of a sprawling extended family. In addition to 8 surviving siblings, Edith's grandmother, aunts, and cousins also lived in the household. The Bowlings had been staunch supporters of the Confederate States of America, were proud of their Southern planter heritage, and in early childhood taught Edith in the post-Civil War's narrative of the Lost Cause. The Lost Cause claims that the Confederate States were just, heroic, and not centered on slavery. Edith had little formal education. While her sisters were enrolled in local schools, Edith was taught how to read and write at home. William Bowling read classic English literature aloud to his family at night, hired a tutor to teach Edith, and sometimes took her on his travels. The Bowling family attended church regularly, and Edith became a lifelong practicing Episcopalian. When Edith was 15, her father enrolled her at Martha Washington College, a finishing school for girls in Abingdon, Virginia. Edith proved to be an undisciplined, ill-prepared student. Edith left after only 1 semester. 2 years later, Edith's father enrolled her in Powell's School for Girls in Richmond, Virginia. Unfortunately, the school closed at the end of the year. While visiting her married sister in Washington, D.C., Edith met Norman Galt, a prominent jeweler of Galton Borough. The couple married on April 30, 1896, and lived in the capital for the next 12 years. In 1903, she bore a son who lived only a few days. The difficult birth left her unable to have more children. In January 1908, Norman Galt died unexpectedly at the age of 43. Edith hired a manager to oversee his business, paid off his debts, and with the income left to her by her late husband, toured Europe. In March of 1915, the widow Edith Galt was introduced to the recently widowed United States President Woodrow Wilson at the Executive Mansion by Helen Woodrow Bones. Helen was the president's first cousin and served as the official Executive Mansion hostess after the death of Wilson's wife, Ellen Wilson. Woodrow Wilson took an instant liking to Edith Galt and proposed soon after meeting her. However, rumors that Woodrow had cheated on his wife with Edith threatened the relationship. Unsubstantiated gossip that Woodrow and Edith had murdered the First Lady further troubled the couple. Distressed at the effect such wild speculation could have on the authenticity of the presidency and respectability of his personal reputation, Wilson proposed that Edith Galt back out of their engagement. Instead, Edith insisted on postponing the wedding until the end of the official year of mourning. Woodrow Wilson married Edith Galt on December 18, 1915, at her home in Washington, D.C. Though the new First Lady had sound qualifications for the role of hostess, the social aspect of her administration was overshadowed by war in Europe and abandoned after the United States formally entered the conflict in 1917. As First Lady during World War I, Edith Wilson observed gasless Sundays, meatless Mondays, and wheatless Wednesdays to set an example for the federal rationing effort. Similarly, she set sheep to graze the Executive Mansion lawn rather than use manpower to mow it, and had their wool auctioned off for the benefit of the American Red Cross. Additionally, Edith Wilson became the first First Lady to travel to Europe during her term. She visited Europe with her husband on 2 separate occasions, in 1918 and 1919. Following his attendance at the Paris Peace Conference in 1919, Woodrow Wilson returned to the United States to campaign for Senate approval of the Peace Treaty and the League of Nations Covenant. However, he suffered a stroke in October 1919, which left him bedridden and partially paralyzed. Edith Wilson and the others in the president's inner circle hid the true extent of the president's illness and disability from the American public. From October 1919 to the end of Wilson's term on March 4, 1921, Edith, acting in the role of First Lady and Shadow Steward, decided who and which communications and matters of state were important enough to bring to the bedridden president. Edith became the sole communication link between the president and his cabinet. Edith took her role very seriously. In 1921, Edith Wilson retired with the former president to their home in South Street Northwest in Washington, D.C., nursing him until his death 3 years later. In 1961, Mrs. Wilson attended the inauguration of President John F. Kennedy. Edith Wilson died of congestive heart failure at age 89 on December 28, 1961. She was buried next to the president at the Washington National Cathedral.